I'm worried about the climate crisis. Worry is an understatement. What is life on planet Earth going to look like when my child is grown up? In the next century, or the century after that? I know positive things are happening around the world and locally, along with a great deal of inaction or business as usual in both places. I wanted to better understand what my city, Northampton, is doing about the threats of climate change. We're not on the front lines of the impacts of climate change, but changes are happening here, and I think most of us understand that we're all connected through this existential crisis. So what are we doing about it? Are we doing enough? How are decisions being made, and what are the obstacles we haven't yet overcome? I started by reaching out to the Director of Planning and Sustainability, Wayne Fiden. His office is currently finalizing a climate action plan for the city. A consultant led this effort, which began in 2018. The scope it tackles, resiliency and regeneration, addresses both how we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and slow down the impact of climate change, and how we adapt to new climate-related stresses, such as increased flooding, energy, and food supply disruptions, while making sure this is all done in an inclusive and equitable way.
2019, Mayor Narkowitz pledged the city to be carbon neutral by 2050.
And that's achievable. It's extremely aggressive. One of the big challenges we have is the number of things that aren't under our control. People can still go out and buy gas-powered vehicles with horrible gas mileage, and people are buying new boilers today and tomorrow that are oil-fired or gas-fired. And so it's very hard to achieve that. Aspirationally, I don't think we have disagreement as a community. And a lot of groups would like us to be much more aggressive. I think everyone would like us to be more aggressive. If we could find a path to being carbon neutral sooner, I don't think there's a disagreement. We don't have the sort of climate deniers in Northampton that some other communities have.
After the draft plan was released, several members of the community commented on and critiqued this climate resilience and regeneration plan in writing and in person.
Nothing we've done before can be used as a model for how we act going forward. Nothing. And so the urgency that we feel, the shaking in my voice when I think about the future that my children are going to be inheriting, the actions that we must take starting now, they have to go in the plan.
The plan now rests in the hands of the Northampton Energy and Sustainability Commission. They are currently deliberating what kind of plan this should be. How detailed or specific should the proposed strategies be? How aggressive should the timeline be? I spoke to some of the commissioners, as well as a member of the Mayor's Youth Commission, about the crux of these debates.
My interpretation of what a climate action, sort of resilience regeneration plan is a roadmap, right? It should be basically a blueprint. Use these plans as an opportunity to think really creatively and outside the box and say, this is the future we want, and not be afraid of setting, really aggressive goals, even if at the time you have no idea how you're going to get there. And I would say that the draft that we currently have for Northampton kind of falls short, both in terms of vision and in terms of having measurable kind of metrics and targets. I think there's general consensus on the commission that that's the case.
It's a good draft. It's got a lot of great ideas, and but we need to make it a little stronger. So the city's is working pretty well on the impact side of things in terms of our stormwater system, making sure that's up for bigger flood events. The street trees that are going in, we've planted 1,000 trees in the last few years, and on track to do many more. The mayor has committed to the city being carbon neutral by 2050. There are a lot of countries in the world that have committed to that as well, and it's very clear that will not meet the goals that are necessary.
The overwhelming sense when reading the plan was that it was just not urgent enough. It wasn't at all expressing the feelings about the climate crisis that I think so many youth feel today. The main feeling is that we just want to listen to the scientists who tell us what we need to do, and they tell us that we need to have 100% renewable energy by 2030 in order to stay under the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming target set by the UN, which was set by other scientists. So basically, we want to just follow the science to set our goals and then figure out how to achieve them. And I think a lot of the language that we saw reflected in the Climate Resilience and Regeneration Plan was kind of the opposite. To me, it's just no compelling argument can be made that to say it's going to be really hard, so we should make it 2050. Like, unless the scientists tell us 2050 is good enough, like, nothing will convince me to make our goal 2050 rather than 2030. I mean, we should be doing what it takes to keep the human species and the whole ecosystem alive.
The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued a special report in 2018 on the impacts of global warming. It was a dire warning of what will become of life on this planet if global temperatures rise above 1.5 degrees Celsius. Essentially, we have until 2050 to meet this goal, or it will be too late. And to make this work globally, wealthy nations have to act the most quickly, getting to zero emissions by 2030. This would give poorer nations time to improve their standard of living before working towards this goal.
Community input, I think, really lit a fire under us. And we saw that we had a responsibility, if we've been appointed by the mayor, to sit there and, to not just be a talking shop, to actually, it's not enough to feel good at the end of the day that you said smart things. We have to actually come up with something that the legislators can use, that the mayor's office can use, that can turn into policy. So on the one hand, we've got a really, really short period of time to get to net zero, or to get to carbon neutral. I think 10 years is a good goal. I think it's achievable, but not easy, but necessary. And that's not because I think so, that's because every climate scientist on the planet has told us that we do this, all of us, together, or we transition into a climate system that we will not want to be in.
It's an interesting commission right now. They're fired up. We have some new counselors on the commission. We also have some activists, which is, I'm fine. We need more of them. But there's a way to be an activist and get things done. For the department heads and the department staff that are on the commission, it's an opportunity for us to do some education. Because if you're not on the inside, you really don't understand what the pluses and minuses and the shortfalls and the time frames can be. So I think that's going to be really critical for us to do as we move forward with this sort of revamped commission.
In an effort to find consensus on the Energy and Sustainability Commission, Wayne Fiden has asked members to first agree on the questions that need answering or metrics required before delving into the edit of the plan.
Right now we're focused on what are the information needs to improve the resiliency and regeneration plan. So, as a community, the mayor's already committed us to be carbon neutral by 2050. There's some interest, can we do something that's even more aggressive? But of course the counter argument is we want to have something that's actually achievable and something that isn't just a feel good we can, say that we're proud of this and doesn't actually go anywhere. So we're trying to collect data. And so there's a lot of areas where our data is not great. We convened a conversation recently with affordable housing providers and said, what would it look like if we said major city expenditures for affordable housing had to be fossil fuel free? And the providers all said, we think we can do that for heating and cooling. We're pretty close for that, but we don't think we can do it for hot water. And so we're sort of exploring that. We're always cautious of the perfect being the enemy of the good. So one argument is let's wait and do the plan so we have a really clear blueprint. The other is let's get the plan going now so we can start implementing some things that's recommended. Some things are on hold while we go through this process. And then one of the things in the plan will clearly be a yearly action plan. So it may be, for example, if we adopted the plan, the yearly action plan would say, how do we get affordable housing providers to heat their water, domestic hot water, in a renewable way? And that lets us go forward.
I will follow the work of this commission as it finalizes the plan and describe the various pathways to carbon neutrality it outlines in future chapters.